Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be tearing into the Silverado, get this active fuel management removed. So hopefully this thing will be more reliable, no more ticking going into 4-cylinder mode, but let's get to it. Alright guys, so I decided to do a little bit of a voiceover over this stuff to utilize the time, keep the process moving forward as best as I can, not have to stop multiple times to show you guys multiple things. I just talk about everything as we go. But the first step we're going to be doing is removing all the plastic push pin clips from that plastic piece that goes over your radiator support and get that out of the way so that we can get the electric fans moved up and out of there so that we can get the radiator moved out. We need to get the radiator out of there so that we have enough room for the cam to clear out of the front of the block. So yeah, that's going to be the first step. Next up, guys, we got to remove the intake, which is a couple of these little clamps, and then there was a little electrical push pin up underneath that needed to be removed from the intake to be able to pull it up and out of there. Now we'll just start removing push pins and clamps and stuff so we can push everything out of the way of the electric fan shroud. Once the fan shroud is moved out of your way, you can start taking the little radiator hose and your trans lines out of the radiator so that you can start getting this radiator removed out of there. You'll also need to remove your upper radiator hose. I decided to remove mine from the engine itself so that I could pull it out with the radiator just to keep a few more things attached. Don't have to reinstall those when we get into the install process. And then also we need to get the overflow line that goes to the overflow tank removed, and I also removed that with the radiator. When I originally pulled the intake, I hadn't planned on pulling the air box out, but it ended up being in the way of the radiator. So it's pretty simple. You just got to pull the mass airflow sensor, electrical connector, and then the box will just pull right up and out of there. Pretty simple and easy. And now your radiator will pull right up and out of there. Next, we'll move into getting the electrical connectors off the alternator to get that out of there. Start removing the bracketry for the alternator and power steering pump. There's three bolts that go into the front of the head, And then don't forget there's one that goes into the side of the head that's on the back side of that bracket. I had originally forgot it, but there is one on the back side. Don't forget it. Then once you get some of the electrical disconnected from your intake and stuff moved back out of the way, then you can get that unbolted. There's a bunch of 8mm that go down into the heads. Once you get those removed, then you can pull the intake out of there. It is a little bit of a pain because there's a plastic cover on the back side of the intake, but it is possible to get out of there. You don't have to remove that plastic cover. Now I like to, once I get the intake out of there, I like to clean up the valley a little bit so that once you remove the heads, you're not dropping anything down into where your lifter trays are. Now we can get these spark plug wires removed from your coil packs and move into getting the coil packs all removed. Pretty simple, there's just a bunch of 10mm on there, and then they pull right off your valve covers. Now we can get the water pump unbolted. I think there's only 4 bolts that hold that on there. Pretty simple, self-explanatory. Then you'll want to remove your coolant crossover pipe. It goes from one head to the other up in the front. I think it's 2 10mm, one on each side. You can get that removed. Next we'll move into getting these valve covers removed so we can get the rockers off. Now we can go ahead and get these rockers removed. Each one has a bolt, but they can all come off as a whole assembly. You don't have to pull them all off individually. That's what I did. It's just pulled them off as an assembly. Much easier that way. Now always, as a good habit, whenever you're putting old parts back in, you want to put them back in their spot. So I would try and keep these separated so that the driver's side goes back on the driver's side and the passenger side goes back on the passenger side. Now we can get these head bolts all removed. There's some on the inside under the valve covers, and then there's some on the outside towards like underneath where the exhaust manifold would be. Once you get all those removed, then you can get the heads off. Now when you're removing this crank pulley, you can run into an issue where the whole engine tries to rotate on you if you're using like a standard 3-jaw puller. This one I'm using in the video is a Matco one, but they sell one just like this on Amazon for a lot cheaper, that you can put a wrench on there and use a socket so that you can keep the engine from rotating while you're pressing it off there. Much better design than a 3-jaw puller. I wouldn't even attempt with a standard 3-jaw puller ever again. Now an issue you'll run into with the oil pump is the oil pickup tube that goes into the bottom of the oil pump. The bolt for it is kind of like up into the oil pan a bit. We will be removing the oil pan later on. We were able to get the bolt off of there just using a wrench. It took quite a while. If I was to do it again, I'd probably remove the oil pan first and then do all of this while the oil pan was still off, and then put the oil pan back on after the oil pump was back in and the pickup tube was put back on. But we're going to be doing it in a little bit different order once we go to install it, so stay tuned for that. Then you can remove the cam retainer plate with a few Torx bits. Now you can put the cam gear bolt back into the cam to be able to have a little bit more of a handle to pull it out of there. Now we can remove the old valley cover that houses all of the solenoids for your cylinder deactivation, so that we can install the non-cylinder deactivation valley cover that basically has a bunch of O-rings that cover up all the little galleys in the block, so no oil is just free-flowing in there anymore. And that is the new non-cylinder deactivation valley cover. I torqued all the bolts to, I believe it was like 130 inch-pounds. You guys don't have to torque them if you don't want to. I couldn't find a torque anywhere online, and I'm sure it's not really that important. but I just did it to 130 inch-pounds. And then we can install the non-DOD cam. I would definitely advise using assembly lube. Helps aid in the startup. It's not as bad as, say, a flat tab cam, since these are roller cams, but it doesn't hurt to just have that little bit of protection for that first startup. Now I put that bolt back in there for the little extra handle there at the end. You can't put that bolt into the cam before you start the cam into the block because there's not enough room to clear the radiator. Same thing when you go to remove it. Make sure you leave enough room to remove that bolt before you get to the radiator, because there won't be enough room to clear it. So just a little heads up. Alright guys, so last part for this video, we're going to be installing the cam retainer plate and torquing it to 18 foot-pounds. That's about as far as I made it in the time that I was there the last time. I'm going to be going there again. It's coming up weekend, so I hopefully will be finishing it up and getting it started. I'll be making another video for the full assembly, and we still need to remove the oil pan and do all of that stuff, so there's a little bit more disassembly left. But if you guys want to see all that stuff, the head's getting torqued on, the oil pan getting done, and everything getting retimed up and everything, check out that video. If you guys are liking this content, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, but I will catch you guys in that next video. Thanks.